While Donald Trump is moving on from his public fight with Fox News, this morning the presidential candidate made the rounds on morning TV and he addressed the back and forth with anchor Megyn Kelly, saying in essence the hatchet's been buried. But he's also separating himself from fellow Republican candidates. Trump is now suggesting he would leave at least some partial federal funding for Planned Parenthood. Well, that's a major departure from congressional Republicans who want all money yanked from the organization while the government investigates practices of harvesting fetal tissues.
I would look at the good aspects of it, and I would also look, because I'm sure they do some things properly and good for women, and I would look at that. And I'd look at other aspects also. But we have to take care of women. We have to absolutely take care of women. The abortion aspect of Planned Parenthood absolutely should not be funded.
Join me now is BuzzFeed reporter Adrian Carrasquillo and also Jackie Kucinich, senior politics editor for the Daily Beast, and also Ann Guerin of the Washington Post. To all of you, a lot to jump into here, starting with you, Jackie, and Donald Trump, who we heard from him. He says he's for abortions in certain cases and will consider leaving some funds for Planned Parenthood, as we just heard. So does this sound like the candidate leading the polls for the Republican primary here?
Well, and you're going to hear his opponents start to talk about this more and more and more as he continues to hold this lead. One of the arguments you hear from Republicans is that Donald Trump is not a Republican. He's an opportunist. He's filling a void against some of the more angry parts of the base. So when you see something like this, you have to imagine this is going to come back to bite him, maybe sooner than the next debate, but certainly in the next debate.
All right, let's also talk about now Marco Rubio and how he comes into play. Wants no exceptions for abortions. So, Adrian, to you now, how big of a problem is that going to be when it comes to a general election candidate and knowing the block of female voters that are so crucial in this race?
You know, I think you saw the other day, Marco Rubio, a lot of people think, I think he won the debate the other night, and he was making a clear argument that, you know, if it's a resume competition, you know, he's sort of an implicit jab at Jeb Bush. Jeb can't beat Hillary, but he believes he can beat Hillary. And now the other problem was that while they were tough questions, he seemed to be okay with that.
Right.
But that question, the abortion question, seemed to trip him up a little bit. And he seemed to be taking a position that only 22% of Americans support. And so that could be a problem for him in the general election against Hillary Clinton, who wants to make this something on men and women issues.
Well, without a doubt. And you consider Hillary Clinton's, you know, what she had to say about it when she says, you know, when there are major candidates, a much younger man, a senator from Florida, says there should be no exceptions for rape and incest. That is as offensive and troubling as a comment you can hear from a major candidate running against the presidency. So Trump's language may be colorful and offensive, but thinking and attitude toward women is much the same. It's just delivered in a different package. So when you hear Hillary Clinton talk about that, Ann, as you're expecting her there in New Hampshire sometime soon, so how does this new war on women narrative, if that's what it's going to be called, play into Hillary Clinton's hands?
Well, I mean, certainly the Republican debate played into her hands in terms of being able to say that Democrats are more on the side of women than Republicans are. That is the argument that they started making heavily during the debate and have continued since. The Donald Trump factor, it can be a bit of a distraction. And you saw Hillary yesterday trying to change the subject. She was asked repeatedly at an event in New Hampshire about Donald Trump to the exclusion of the college affordability issue she was trying to talk about, and really also to the exclusion of the other Democratic candidates. And she kept trying to turn the conversation away from Trump and onto the full spectrum of the Republican candidates. She kept saying in different ways, look at what the rest of them were saying. It is as troubling as offensive as what Donald Trump said. And she seemed to take particular aim and perhaps have particular concerns about Rubio.
Right. Well, we also know that based on tonight, Hillary Clinton may be watching Jeb Bush and what he has to say, Jackie, because he's giving that pretty significant foreign policy speech tonight at the Reagan Library in California. What does he have to do to excite voters to show that he's kind of there, knowing that there's also on this side he may be taking those swipes at Hillary on Iraq and ISIS as well?
Republican voters want to see Hillary hit hard. So Jeb Bush is going to have to give a speech that seems to, he's going to tie her with some of the president's policies. And they want to see him aggressively go after her, frankly. And so we'll see if he does that.
All right, Adrian, very quickly, when you come in there, Scott Walker, and the trouble for Jeb Bush with that, what needs to happen, especially in reflecting, Scott Walker and the trouble with the core block of voters he's been having?
Well, what I think is one thing that's interesting that no one's talking about with Scott Walker is that with Latino voters, he has gone very much to the right in the primary. He has flip-flopped on his support for a path to citizenship, and that's something that could hurt him in the general election if he were to face Hillary Clinton.
All right, a lot to watch, and we thank you for helping us break it all down. BuzzFeed reporter Adrian Carrasquillo, Jackie Kucinich of the Daily Beast, and Guerin of the Washington Post. To all of you, thank you very much.
Thank you.